Before any strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured, the highest standard we can set.
The vast majority of those killed in drone strikes, over 98%, have not been high-value targets.
As long as American troops are in Afghanistan, President Obama is not going to do away with signature strikes.
The adoption of signature strikes make indiscriminate killing, a policy.
What they end up with is what I described earlier, the signature strike.
They move back to a greater reliance on these signature strikes.
Will you explain what a signature strike is?
Absolutely.
A signature strike is a drone strike that isn't based on the identity of the target.
We are targeting people without having any concept of who it is that we're killing.
I obtained classified U.S. intelligence reports on drone strikes. What the documents reveal are the way that signature strikes are put together, and these are strikes against people who fit the signature of what the U.S. government says is a terrorist.
Maybe they are walking in and out of the compound with guns, maybe they're getting in trucks and they're moving to the Afghan border.
And drone operators seated thousands of miles away from the area affected are looking at video feeds, assessing those video feeds, and based on that making decisions about whether or not someone who's walking through the community is a suspected terrorist.
And you conclude on the basis of the behavior that they are a terrorist, and you kill them.
But looking at the imagery itself, there's no way you can tell a target is good, bad, other, indifferent, unless they were wearing a big sign on their back that said, hey, I'm Taliban or I'm Al-Qaeda, because it doesn't read minds.
The existence of signature strikes was first reported in early 2008 during the Bush administration, describing a shift in policy agreement in the agreement between the U.S. and Pakistan as to who could be targeted.
The agency became convinced that it had gotten so good at watching from above that it could distinguish different groups. It could distinguish whether a terrorist leader was at a certain location.
But there is room for a lot of misunderstanding when you're doing something like conducting signature strikes.
A drone strike is only as good as the intelligence that is behind the actual strike. Drones hit what they aim to hit. But if they're aimed at the wrong people, then civilians are killed.
Former U.S. Ambassador Cameron Munter had said that one man's combatant was another man's chump who went to a meeting.
When Leon Panetta was director of the CIA, somebody memorably said, if Leon sees a few guys doing jumping jacks on the ground, he thinks that's a terrorist training camp.
In a number of cases that I looked at, the CIA wasn't sure who they were hitting.
As soon as those signature strikes begin, we start to see another steep escalation in civilian casualties. In a signature strike, you're suddenly seeing 15, 20, 25, 30 people killed all at once. So that's what happens when signature strikes go wrong. Large numbers of people die.
On March 17, 2011, a jirga was held in Darakel to resolve a dispute over a chromite mine.
If there is a feud getting out of hand, jirga will convene and everyone has a chance to speak. It really is a democracy, and that is a mechanism to make sure that there is stability in society.
Dacă počali sme pusa kasan sara nasti, po dva za nasti, yo zakaj, bal zakaj. O po mijmon de da khabare kړل چې د کورمیټ او د لارګي تم زکه نو سویمش د سګرد.
They held the jirga in an open space in a bus depot in broad daylight. Tribal elders informed the Pakistani military.
Brigadier Dogan was in command of the brigade on the border, so he is a key commander. The brigadier knew about the jirga 10 days in advance. His own army camp was 10 kilometers from the site of the jirga.
So this was an open public event that pretty much everyone in the community and surrounding area knew about.
هغه وخت کې زه 3 کیلومتره کوم ما په خپل هغه ډرون لیدې او چې کله یې میزایل وویشتل هغه میزایل ما ولیدل خو هغه د تخیل منه 3 کیلومتره هغه طرف ته ونه ویاړه.
So the jirga begins in the morning at about 10 o'clock, and after about 20 minutes or so,
ده په ماس کې په پکار نیولاس باجې باندې په 17/3/2011 کې په میژ باندې څلور مزایل وشتل شو. دوه مزایل میژ باندې وشتل شو، دوه په بل دی باندې وشتل شو.
There's smoke and debris and chaos.
It was a huge explosions. So people in the shop in the nearby areas, they rushed to the place.
دا هغه وخت کې هغه ځای ته ورغله چې په هغه کې زخمیان او د بنی ادم ټوکړې ټوکړې دغه هلته موجوده وي چې زه ورسېدم.
کله ټول مشران پکې شهیدان شوي دي، نو زه ډېر خفه شوم ځکه چې زمونږ پلار چې و نو هغه زمونږ د قبیلې مشر و، زمونږ د آمدن ذریعه وه، ټول زمونږ ډیپنډ چې و نو زمونږ په پلار باندې و.
واته چې کله موږ ورسېدلې د تخیله و سیمه ته پوښتنه وکړه چې څېره کسون وي چې صوب یې نشي شمېرې نشي ټوکړې ټوکړې دي خلک غشه غشه دي ښه نه و صرف چې داسې مو وکتل او صرف ټوکړې وې کپړې کمیسونه پکې سوي وي.
On Thursday, a drone strike in the remote tribal areas killed up to 30
U.S.
people.
drone missile strike on Thursday killed at least...
Airstrikes near the Afghan border left more than 40 dead. Most of the dead were tribal elders.
In one morning, 40 important leaders all eliminated.
مو پېژندل چې د میش خپل د قبیله ولا 15 کسون وي چې
The loss of 40 leaders on a single day is devastating for that community. It's devastating in terms of leadership, it's devastating in terms of the moral compass, and it's devastating in economic terms as well.
نه چونکې دا زمونږ دپاره یو ډېر نقصان و. هغه به په جرګې کې کېناستو، د خلکو مسلې به یې حل کولې، د خلکو د ترقۍ او د خوشحالۍ دپاره یې به کارونه کول، ځکه چې هغه د خپلې علاقې یو الکټ کونسلر و.
This drone strike is coming at the end of a series of drone strikes. It's feeding into the sense of no one is safe, nowhere is safe, nothing is safe. Even a jirga, the most cherished, the most treasured institution of the tribal areas. So we cannot even sit down and resolve an issue. That is not safe anymore.
That impact has really affected the population and their basic sense of security and basic sense of living in that area.
ابشام خوږیږي یا صحیح نه ده دا ډیکی سره لګي زخم کو تا دوه ورځې بیا پرشن کو وای غژن ډېر تکلیف ترته په دماغ کې مې پارخ ونرتي
او باقي د میژ ژوندین خو از د تبعیض سره مخامخ ته لکه د میژ چې څومره ادارې دي او ختم شولې.
نو چونکه په دې ټایم باندې زه د میرانشاه په کور کې وم، زما انکل چې راغی هغې دا خبر راکړو چې داسې په جرګه باندې ډرون حمله شوې ده او زموږ د کلي ټول مشران پکې شهیدان شوي دي.
Thank you very much and good afternoon everyone. Thank you for being here today.
3 months after 42 civilians died, John Brennan stood up at John Hopkins and said,
Nearly for the past year there hasn't been a single collateral death because of the exceptional proficiency, precision of the capabilities that we've been able to develop.
High-level authorities tell the American public that there have been no civilian casualties.
These guys were terrorists, not the local men's glee club.
These were not people gathering for a bake sale, these were terrorists.
There's every indication that this was a group of terrorists, not a charity car wash in the Pakistani hinterlands.
They were presumably using this notion that any male of a certain age, roughly between 14 and 60, who is killed is automatically counted as a combatant.
The Vietnam body count as a metric was flawed. It did not really give you a measure of how successful you were being. In fact, it led you astray in assessing that. And the drone strikes are the same way. They're the wrong metric. Tell me how we're winning if every time we kill one, we create 10. That's not a metric that tells you if you're winning. What tells you if you're winning is if Muslims decide not to support the radical fringe.
But the strikes at Tatakel caused a significant negative reaction by Pakistani authorities and by the Pakistani people.
Anti-American sentiment in Pakistan reached greater heights.
That very large drone strike really upended U.S.-Pakistani relations.
I was a military guy for 25 years. I've done 7 wars. I'm not about being nice to the enemy. But the blowback and the aspect of political destabilization, those things ultimately do make us less safe.
The growing public outcry appears to have at least compelled the country's top political and military leadership to publicly denounce U.S. drone attacks.
Despite the Pakistani government's superficial denouncement of drone strikes, its refusal to take meaningful action forced victims to turn to the courts.
چونکه د عدالت کار هم دی چې انسان ته د هغې خاوند ته د انصاف میلاو شي.
So we brought an action against Pakistani government, the Ministry of Defense as well, and we are asking them some serious questions about their involvement in drone strikes.
شهزاد اکبر سره زما رابطه وشوه. هلته د ده کسانو هغه ماته راغلي وو، هغې مونږ ته ویلي وو چې تاسو به دا کیس په عدالت کې اوچتوئ چې تاسو ته انصاف میلاو شي.
A court in Pakistan has ruled U.S. drone strikes on Pakistani territory are illegal and should be stopped in light of the growing number of civilian casualties. The ruling is in response to a lawsuit filed by the relatives of a man who died in a 2011 drone strike.
This is a landmark decision. The United States is the most powerful country. It has been engaging in illegal acts around the world.
What hasn't sunk in are some questions about who are we actually targeting? Are these actually the enemies, appropriate enemies of the U.S.?
And without some of that basic information, the public debate at home and abroad is crippled.
We need to start moving away from the mentality that thinks that you can shoot your way out of a terrorist war.